What's up, everyone? Happy Friday, and welcome to the game on Pax8 Live, the show where we talk about all the cybersecurity shenanigans you need to be aware of. And we have some extra shenanigans this week because Matt is at Ride of Boom, so it's going to be a power-packed episode. We've got a total of 3 guests coming live from the hotel. But first, let's jump through the basics. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. If you want to interact with us, please interact with us via YouTube. As a much better way to do it so that we can pull your comments live onto the show. Don't forget to sign up for Pax8 Beyond. It's really creeping up on us, keeps taking more and more of my calendar time, which means it is materializing and becoming real. So don't forget to grab your ticket before the next price jump comes. And let's jump into Ride of Boom.
Dom, I'm so stoked to be here. Yeah, I'm at Ride of Boom, and we're going to get into that here in just a little bit, and we'll maybe have some guests join us. But I am stoked to be here, and I'm stoked that we actually got this going. We had some real technical difficulties right before the show. The Wi-Fi was not cooperating, so maybe it does, maybe it doesn't today. If you're in the audience, like chat, let me know if you're here. Let me know if you're at Ride of Boom. Please put in and participate. But Dom, let's go ahead and kick over to the news, and we'll get y'all read in, and then we'll get going with our show.
All right. Well, news article number 1, it's another patch now. Another, us begging you to patch your stuff. Apple zero-day exploits bypass kernel security. So this is a big one. New emergency security updates. The word emergency is the operative term there to fix 2 critical iOS zero-day vulnerabilities that are actively being exploited. I want to point that out. They're already doing this. And it allows you to compromise the kernel level. It doesn't get any lower than that. So 2024 23225.
I also do want to point out, Dom, that we're at 2024 23,296 vulnerabilities by March. I just want to put this in perspective, right? Like, yeah. Anyways,
I mean that's probably it, right? Like there's no need to beat this article to death. It's a kernel level vulnerability, which means if I use it against your phone, I can do literally anything I want on that phone. There will be nothing to stop me. I don't care what you have on that phone. I can get to it. So yeah, don't ignore that patch. Get it done. And we wanted to cover this one because, there's too much not patching going on. And everyone probably has an iPhone. So let's take care of that.
Yeah.
All right.
One of the things I want to talk about on this one. No, I want to come back. Let's chat about this for a sec. So one of the things that we're talking about is they said in there, no longer just for nation state players anymore, right? They're saying Apple rootkits, no longer just for nation state players anymore. And I was hanging out with some of the guys, the threat researchers from Lookout, and talking about what they're saying here in this article is extremely accurate, right? The mobile phone, iOS vulnerabilities. Let's look back all the way to Pegasus with the NSO group. Right? Pegasus was a purpose-built software that literally just took advantage of flaws in Apple. It's not Microsoft this time, it's Apple. And made it where you could send the single text message to take device control, right? They sold that software as Pegasus until they did it against an Israeli and then lost everything. But ultimately, this is a long string of that. And so just understand that when we come back to it, we can come up with these complex countermeasures. We can come up with all these things. But at the end of the day, patch, like update. If you have an iPhone and it
Please.
has an emergency out of band update, please update. Yeah, so absolutely. I think that's the piece I want to call out is if you're not paying attention to these, make sure your settings are set to auto update, right? Make sure that you do have those things set that you are going to be successful on that. And to your point, Dom, what this was talking about is it was a kernel mode bypass of the kernel mode that protections that are in place, right? That keep one application
Right.
from sharing memory resources from another application or having the access to the other application's working space, if you will, right? So this is saying that can be bypassed, which to your point means we have we have the full control of the phone and access to all the different applications by bypassing that. So if you haven't patched, please patch. And Dom, I don't think you have that problem, right? Because you're not betrothed to the Apple compendium, as I understand it.
I'm a Pixel guy myself, although I have my fair few emergency patches, so it gets everyone.
That's true. That's true. All right, next article. Let's go. Patch your iPhones, folks. Black Cat ransomware shuts down an exit scam and blames the feds. This was so delicious. I've been watching this play out since that $23 million hit their wallet the other day. And it says the Black Cat ransomware gang is pulling an exit scam, trying to shut down and run off with affiliates' money by pretending the FBI seized their site. Like nothing to see here. On a hackers forum, Alfie said that he decided to close the project because of the feds without providing additional details. However, a national law enforcement agency, or one of the three letters, listed the seizure banner, confirmed to Bleeping Computer that they were not involved in any disruption in Alfie, right? We've only seen that happen not in Black Cat, but in Lapsus and in the other one recently. The feds screwed us over. The ransom gang started exit scam operation on Friday, where they took their Tor data leak blog offline, and on Monday they further shut down the rest of their negotiation servers and infrastructure after they stole, quote, a $20 million Change Healthcare ransom from them. Yesterday, the gang's status on talks tweeted, GG, good game. Like, I'm out. See ya. At the end of this, 22 million and they're retiring. So what are your thoughts on this, Dom? There's just so many things we could unpack here, but what do you think?
I mean, I hadn't thought about this, but like if you're going to be a ransomware affiliate, right? If you're gonna use a ransomware as a service, I suppose this is like a supply chain challenge for you, right? Like, yeah,
right.
The ransomware operator could run off with your Bitcoin. It's a little funny, not gonna lie, but yeah, I genuinely hadn't thought of this.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, they're like, in a regular criminal organization, it would be like something on like Ocean's 11 or any of those, right? Team robs casino. I guess I shouldn't say that in a casino. Maybe that's like saying bomb in a theater.
Well,
like maybe I shouldn't say robs casino in a casino. But they rob a casino, and then one guy screws them over and takes all the money, right? This is the kind of same thing we're seeing play out. And now here we have this whole no honor among thieves playing out yet again, it seems, right? They're trying to use some kind of obfuscation or false flag to say, no, the feds took us down. We didn't take off with your $23 million. That's not us. No. They took it from us. They shut us down. And I guess
I think it's gold that the feds said, no, we didn't. like,
right.
Like they just came out. We're like, nah, that wasn't us.
Yeah, I would imagine we'll see more in this news over the next couple of weeks, right? Of the playing out of this, of threat actors actually maybe coming back and targeting others, right? It's actually probably a good thing, but it's interesting because do you know what the largest ransom in history was paid?
I don't off the top of my head.
It was 40 million, and it was paid by an insurance company last year, and or 2 years ago, 2022, and it was off of a $70 million ransom request, right? So 40 million ransom was paid out. But what's interesting is there's not many of these mega hits, right? Are we wearing the same shirt today, Dom? It looks like we are. I just don't have the beard modification yet. Oh, yes. I have to get my logos permanently lowered 2 or 3 inches. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things where money corrupts, and when you go hit a lick like a $23 million lick, I could live on $23 million pretty decently. I think
be fine. Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a bad day. I would have my coffee every day, right? So, anyways, I digress. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next news.
So it's a slow news week.
Were those
we only got 2 articles. Yeah.
All right, then I will use this.
We're going to go to level
talk
up.
About something else. No. I want to talk about something else. We'll stay here for a second.
Let's see it.
So I was talking with Beggs, Patrick Beggs from ConnectWise, and one of the things I've been doing is I'm still tracking those Screen Connect servers. Let's play a game, Dom. Over under. Where do you think the number of patched machines in my 1,000 machine cohort What percentage are we at patched now?
What percentage were we at when we last looked at this? I need a
We were
frame of
21.
reference.
We were 21 a week ago today.
I'm gonna go 37.
You're not far. It was 40. So yeah, and that's the point, y'all. If you're watching this and you have a Screen Connect server that's not patched, patch it. The interesting part is, yeah, go ahead.
There was a Reddit on our MSP, and it was, oh my God, my client's Screen Connect server was compromised with this. And I was like, what? Wait a minute. First of all, why does the client have a Screen Connect server? Like, sure, maybe they're not line of business, but how in the hell are we not on top of this? Right? That's wild. And then there was some stipulation, like, or speculation around whether or not it's cracked. But like, I don't care, right? Like, why is this a thing?
Yeah.
So there was some speculation that maybe it's not a genuine license, and that's why.
I don't think that's the case.
That's why it wasn't shut off. But I don't think so either.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case. Maybe there's some mix of that, but I think there's another piece playing out, and this is 2.1 personified and 2.3 personified. Right? 2.1 says have a list of your software that is approved in your organization, and 2.3 says have a way to address unauthorized software, which would be the inverse of said list. And what's interesting is a lot of the players that have been blocked, that we can tell the Screen Connect servers seem to be not having their license, which back to ConnectWise did some pretty awesome stuff there. But the Screen Connect server not having its license, I think it's going to play out like I saw with another MSP. There was an MSP that had a client popped. The client had bought a Screen Connect server. They had not used it. The agents were still on. They were still connected, but nobody was using it. So taking away the license didn't cause problems. There was no one actually using it. And so I'm wondering if there's a lot of this where people have deployed something, not done anything with it, left it alone. They bought a perpetual license. The infrastructure is still up. I think there's some interesting pieces of evidence of our lack of hygiene playing out.
Yeah. And I mean, we were seeing what, version 5 was the oldest, or was it version 4?
5s and 6s, bro, of like 28, 29.
So, so I could see that they're just there. They're dormant. Maybe it's on the Action Pack Azure sub, so they're not getting a bill for it. Like,
right.
Good point.
Right. Or it's running on some virtual machine host that they've got, right? I think, you know, how many times have you taken over a client that had superfluous servers running and tons of things, and you have to go, what is this for? Like, let's do the smoke test or the holler test, right? Shut her down, see who hollers. And you know, it's interesting, but I think there's some interesting things. I will probably keep tracking this, y'all. Anybody in the audience, we're probably going to keep tracking the same cohort and see if we ever get to a point where either they are gone and shut down or they're finished patching. But yeah, I wanted to kind of take a second to talk about that because we're going to get into Right of Boom. Dom, do you want to take a second and explain the term Right of Boom before you even go into the news? Then we'll get back to it.
Yeah, Boom is your cybersecurity event, we'll call it, right? So threat actor will gain some sort of access. The boom is when they do what they were there to do. The most easy explanation is it's when the ransomware does what ransomware does, but it could be any number of attacks. It's when it happens. And when you're right of the boom, think about a timeline. It's everything you do after the boom, right? And everything you've set up, understanding that someday you're going to be right of boom. What have you done to limit the radius of that boom? But then how do you react to it? Instant response, etc.
Yeah, 100%. And so this conference is focused on left-hand right of boom, right? This understanding that I'm going to be left of boom, right? That would be identify and protect, or left of boom. And then you have boom, which is detect, right? And then you have right of boom,
hopefully,
which is this respond and recover and containment aspects of this. So we'll get into that here in a minute. I'd love to hear some wisdom from Robin Harris, and then we'll come back and kick off what this conference was and maybe have a couple of guests to talk about their experiences with Right of Boom. So see you here in a bit after we hear from Robin Harris.
Hello. I want to talk about something that a lot of people don't think about, and certainly I don't think anybody gets excited about it, and that is spring cleaning. So I'm going to date myself a little bit, and I'm going to tell you, when I was coming up in the spring, my mother went on this spring cleaning mad woman frenzy. And if you lived in that house, you had to participate in the spring cleaning activity. And when we look at our data and our technology and environment and all the things we're using and the things we're no longer using, we need to look at how we offboard things, how we shut things down, how we make sure we've closed accounts and got rid of all that legacy stuff. Because if we don't, what's going to happen is that stuff is just going to go out of mind. We're not going to remember that we opened the account and we put this over there and we subscribe to this, and this. And so that's all of our information in places that it doesn't need to be anymore. So I have a horror story to tell you about this. This is a paper story because what happened when we transitioned into ISO, the auditors would actually come and we opened the cabinet door. First of all, it wasn't locked and we saw all this paper in there. And we started looking at what is this? And lo and behold, it had people's social security numbers on it. Not just a few pieces of paper, lots of paper with account data and people's social security number. You know, back in the day, we used to be very careless with our social security number, but this data had just been sitting there for years and years and years. And we did not discover it until we went through doing a cleanup. So let's put that into the digital world. When you offboard a product, you're no longer using it, do you make sure that your data is removed? Because if you're not doing it, you need to go back and do that. If they don't tell you they're removing the data, if they don't tell you that they've destroyed that data, or they don't give you the opportunity to delete that data could still be sitting there. And you could have your client's data over here in this system that you're not using anymore, over there in that system. And not only that, you could be paying for stuff you don't even use anymore because you didn't think about, I've got this subscription and it auto renews because you're over here on a new platform doing the new thing and you kind of forgot about officially decommissioning the old thing. You want to go through and you want to make sure you have an inventory of the systems you're using and where your data is. Now, ISO brings this up. This is a new control in the ISO 27001-2022 about information deletion. That's new. When you no longer need certain sensitive data, I mean, do you really need something that goes back 10, 15 years? Maybe financial records, you need to maintain those for a while. Employee records, you need to maintain those for a while. But there's a time frame. Now, when you get to that time frame, do you have a process in place that says, hey, we got to go delete this data? The last thing you want to have happen is you've retained data from clients who are no longer clients, employees who are no longer employees, and you just leave it sitting there, and something goes wrong. Now your risk and your exposure has multiplied because you've got obsolete data, but it's still got their social security numbers, it's still got their account numbers, it's still got their email, it's still got their address. So this is one of the reasons that ISO established this new control. You want to delete data when you no longer need. And it's something as simple as marketing data. For anyone who's dealing with GDPR, you understand now you're bumping up against privacy because you've got people's emails, you can have their phone numbers, you can have their addresses, and you're using all these marketing systems to do this and to do that, and the data is just sitting there. And years pass and the data is still sitting there. But these people haven't engaged with you in 5 years. Chances are they're not opening your emails and they don't even want to hear from you. We need to not hold on to all of this old data because it increases our risk of exposure. And let's take this a little bit further because not only as a corporation, as individuals, we have the same issue. How many times have we signed up for something? We signed up for this over here, we signed up for that over there, and we're not using it anymore, and we never closed the account, and we never deleted the account. So now your stuff is all over the place. Yeah, spring cleaning. So you can put on a calendar. It's not fun. I know it's not fun, but put on your calendar. This is something you need to do on an annual basis. Go through everything that you're not using anymore. You need to shut it down and offboard properly. That's my thoughts about the matter. And I want you to enjoy, if it's possible, enjoy spring cleaning.
Always wise words from Robin Harris, but I actually used one of those hooks out in the hallway and just snagged Wes Spencer in here. So I do have real Wes Spencer with me right now. This is not Wes Spencer. I want to make sure and clarify this. This is the real Wes Spencer, like the Ohio State. This is the Wes Spencer, as I understand it.
Let's not get there.
Okay, no, too much.
I don't need. What do you call the the? It's like the what's the anyway, grammar's hard.
Okay, grammar.
But it's good to be with you.
Yeah, man, likewise. All right, so we're at Write a Boom. I want to cover a couple things, and I like doing these type of things where I get to ask somebody that's at the conference what they experienced, right? And Dom and I already kind of covered that Write a Boom is boom goes splody. Write a Boom is something we now have to respond to, right? That's going to be the
Splody.
Splody is a real technical term. Yeah.
There needs to be a new vendor. That's
Splody and baddies. Splody and baddies. But we do have a conference we're at. You also launched kind of your company, which we'll talk to here in a minute, with a couple of friends of mine, like the knuckleheads that I love very much.
Yep.
So first question is, these type of conferences, it seems like the people that are here are self-selectedly more mature. The people that are here seem to be on the larger end to some extent, or at least maturity-wise, certainly. What are your thoughts? What stands out to you? How's the conference been? Let's just get right into it.
Well, I've been helping and been involved in Write a Boom for a couple of years now when Andrew first started
Since the inception.
And there's always been a need for a little bit more of a neutral flag that got planted that did attract, I think, not just MSPs that were wanting to grow in security, but also those that had already been on a track and a trajectory for growth. And I think what resonated with people from the beginning, Matt, was this idea of we're not just going to split you off into just go pick a session that seems good to you. We're going to walk you through a journey. We're going to walk you through a consistent delivery from beginning to end. And what we're talking about is intentful. And so what that result in is a good control of content and good output from what people have learned from that, right? And they're like, man, this was actually really helpful to go from here to here, and I have pages of notes. You don't sometimes get that when you have a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Ad hoc content, right? Like you have this, to your point, you have this contextual anchor, right? I'm going from this I need to know to this next thing I need to know, and it's a journey. And we might come back to that as a little Johnny foreshadowing, actually, as we get into this. I just realized. But ultimately, the point is, you're taking them through a track. And even others that have attempted this do something more like, hey, here's the technical ones you can just we're going to start over here. We're going to walk our way this way on the line, maybe go back a little bit and walk, but it really does kind of give you a context anchor of where you are. That's what I do like about this as well, is that you're like, okay, I'm here. We're talking about left of boom. We're in protection, or over here in identification. And so it does give that anchor. The other thing I'd ask is, coming from these conferences, you almost get inspired as a participant, and then you're overwhelmed and there's a million things to do. And ultimately, there's some paralysis analysis.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that?
So I'm a big believer. We do this whenever I do workshops. We'll do these 2-day long workshops with folks, and you see the 4, 5, 6 pages of notes, and it goes from excitement to intimidation really quickly if you're not careful about it. So I'm a big believer in the one big thing. What's the one big takeaway? Boil everything down. And then what I do, and I would encourage people to do that are listening now, is get with your teams and say, together, what's the one big thing? Matt, you give your one big thing. I'll give mine. And I think what's really helpful about that is it really lets you kind of boil down into priorities. And I think even hearing from others, man, that's a great one big thing. I didn't think about it that way. I think these kind of mesh together, and we're going to start working on a strategy over here or something. So I think it's always that way. One big thing, elephant, one bite at a time. It's always that way. And if you don't do that, you do hit analysis paralysis.
Yeah, for sure. Dom, you go to these things all the time, and we did a talk at a throwdown, right? We did a kind of little private cybersecurity event. How do you help people take away their one big thing? Do you, as the person presenting it, have to present that, or is it going to be up to the person's interpretation? And you've also been to a bunch of these. How do you come back with your big thing?
You got to present. Well, from my perspective, I like to present whatever concept I'm trying to get people to understand. But where I really feel I drive value is after I'm done, right? We leave, we talk in the hallway, we talk at dinner or whatever, and they kind of pick apart what you said. right? And then they kind of find where they're going to go with it. And that's really like, if I can get that post validation, like something I said was valuable, and help them turn it into their journey, that's where they find their one big thing, right? Because we can only present so much. So if we can meet with people and help them unpack what you just said and turn it into an action item, I think that's massive.
So, Wes, I'd like to put this on you too. You are in a company trying to educate. Like that is pretty much your whole world is teaching, and teaching means I have to learn. I have to have knowledge, right? Data is the lowest form, information's above it. Knowledge is now discerned information I can do something with, right? So, how do you feel these type of blitz conferences? I'm here, I'm immersed. I come away with one big thing or 20 or 50 pages of notes, and I put them in a corner. How is that different than a concerted training program, like where you're doing this on a basis long term?
There's definitely a lot of differences, right? And I think when we think about how we learn and what we're learning, I mean, I'm not I'm not an expert in like design theory and curriculum development. What I do know is there are values and that come from both of those, right? Like
Sure.
when you go to a conference, you get exposed to new ideas.
Yep.
You get exposed to a whole bunch of other practitioners that are in the same seat that you're in, and you're learning, what are you doing? What's working for you? What did you think about that? How is this working for you? And you always come away with those boom light bulb moments. But that's a little bit of like scattershot in the sense
Sure.
of like, I don't know exactly what I'm going to get when I go to this.
It's non-deterministic. It's like lucky, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then so when you have a structured learning process, and you say, okay, we know like this is the learning outcome that we want to get to. Now we can design all the inputs that go into that to flow that through to make sure you come out with desired outcomes that map to requirements. And that's super valuable too, right? And so you do want hand in hand, you want both of those together. And also just conferences are refreshing. Like as much as you get exhausted, there's so much fun to see friends and like give hugs and hear how people are doing and celebrate one another.
I always wondered how I had COVID 7 times. As I was walking around today hugging 5 different people I haven't seen in the last X.
That'll do it.
That's probably how.
That'll do it.
Just that chest-to-chest contact, wrapped up arms. That'd be my supposition as how this happens. But I think you hit something that's pretty big, because my one big thing, if we're going to play this game, and I'm going to ask you and put you on the spot with it too. My one big thing out of this conference was the keynote speech by the Navy SEAL. And the thing that he talked towards, and I just felt it was validating, was growth mindset, right? My one big thing is lean into that growth mindset. Understand that I might have been wrong yesterday. I'm going to have new context. And I think it hits on your point, which is I might stumble into somebody that changes my world. I might learn something from somebody that says, I have a whole new paradigm. I see it completely different because of that. And you can't do that without a growth mindset. You can't do that unless you are moving towards trying to be better, trying to assume that you weren't good yesterday and that I can be better tomorrow. And the only easy day was yesterday, right? In that kind of conversation. So what was your one big thing?
Oh, what a great, I'm glad you prepped me so my brain could get a little bit to think about it. It's perfect. And I think I have it. My one big thing is this. I think that where we're at in terms of our capacity and desire to learn and to grow as MSPs is already at terminal velocity, but we've just jumped out of the plane.
Yeah.
We have so much more distance to cover and grow. But what I mean by that is I've run into so many MSPs lately that have said back to me, like, we have recognized just how critical it is for our MSP to truly master and build and own and put accountability into our learning and growth and upskill processes. And if we don't do that, we will not survive.
Accountability.
I've been using that A word over and over and over. This guy over here, you can't see off camera. He can talk about that.
We'll throw things at him here.
Yeah, we should. Someone ought to. But yeah, to me, that's been the one big thing. I'm seeing this come to life out of MSPs, and I love it.
Yeah, I get to do two big things because I'm the show host, so it works out. But I also have seen that maturation, and it does seem rapid, right? Like I would agree with that. Dom, you aren't here, so you don't have a one big thing. But what are your thoughts on this learning curve from immersion, like in a conference with people that give you context, vis-a-vis a planned learning journey? Like, or is there a place for both? Like, any thoughts to add to that?
I think you have to have both. I was literally having this conversation like internally today about why do we need to be able to deliver both formats of learning? And the answer is for me, at least, going to a conference and seeing 15, 18, 20 different people speak about 15, 18, 20 different things. It allows me to find the one big thing. It gives me ideas on what I want to dive in on. And I think structured or planned learning is, okay, I've picked these 5 things or one thing out of the 20 things I saw at these keynotes. I'm going to go down this track, right? That's what got me into like ISC squared and going down that track was I went to a conference and saw all kinds of different learning paths. And I was like, all right, I want to be the administrative guy. I don't want to be, right?
Yeah.
So in any context, I think if you start broad and narrow, that's what these 2 formats empower.
Dom just nailed it. Start broad and narrow. Well, I've got a few more minutes with you, Wes, and I stumbled on my words because it's a new tongue. I just got this put in yesterday. It's not functional. But tell me about what you started. You are now past your timeline with the owl. You are now starting your own thing, and it seems to be training related or something, or some premise there. Help me understand, what is Empath?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting journey too, in the sense of like, I never knew for years that if I boil down who I am and what I am, I'm an educator.
Didn't know it either. I'm the same way. I learned that.
And we stumble into these roles because I think people think, oh, if you're an educator, you have to be a teacher or a professor. And I actually did that for years and got burnt out because the red tape in academia was not for me. And yet I fall into banking and I end up being an educator. I remember when we started Perch, I was an educator, like teaching MSPs, here's how to think about threat detection. Because in those early days, Matt, you remember them, people would come in and they'd say, well, but how does Perch stop threats?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not what
we're finding it. We're detect.
Yeah.
We're boom finders.
Yes.
We finds the booms.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I remember just being dumbfounded and then thinking, wait, once I teach and I educate, all of a sudden it clicks to an MSP. Like, oh, that makes total sense. I can get buy-in from a client on that. So I found myself educating. Yep. And what happened with Empath was, you know, when I left the Owl and I had some time on my hands and I kind of had to think about what I'm going to do when I grow up, one of the things that came to my head was, I think I just want to do this Empath thing. And Empath, stepping in the shoes of others, you know, kind of where are you at and how can I kind of perceive, you know, your journey. And originally I just turned it into like what we call a lifestyle, right? Like, come join if you want. It's just this thing I'm doing. It's just going to be some cybersecurity education. And it went well. I have about 65 or so MSPs that have joined in, and it was great. But then I meet, you know, I've known Alex for years, right? And Alex we were just this momentous opportunity where he was kind of thinking through, what do I want to do next in my life? And he said, I'll let him say, he's a little more uncouth than me. I showed him the platform.
We're on YouTube. It's okay.
And what did he say? He's over here. He said, yell it out real loud. But I don't know if you hear it.
Oh, we'll hear him. Go with it. Nobody wants another blanking portal to log into, is what we heard here.
It hurt my feelings. You know, he's right. And then what did he do? He came over and we all, me and Alex and Kyle, started this whole thing together. And I think the gist is this, where we went into the lifestyle brand of thinking, going into like, we're actually going to jump out of the plane of that parachute. We're all in an Empath. Yeah, awesome. Was really this idea that MSPs don't hire from NSA, they don't hire from CrowdStrike, they don't hire from Microsoft, they hire from the AT&T store, they hire from Best Buy.
Yeah.
And from that perspective, you know, what are MSPs doing to upskill their folks once they come into that organization? Most of the time, it's what we call hip to hip. There's no structured accountability.
Watch John, he'll teach you.
That's right. And so that's kind of what we're building. That's what we're all about. And that's what we're trying to help MSPs transform their businesses through doing, through really focusing on that kind of upskill and consistency.
Have you found MSPs leaning into this? Like, because there's 2 things I want to unpack. One is Empath, this concept of empathy, this understanding of someone else's emotions, this understanding of someone else's paradigm, the way they see the world, the way they process things. That's empathy, right? And I think that's piece of it. And the other piece is this, there's almost like a second part of that empathy, in that you're having this empathy for where people are coming from to try to teach them through that path, right? So you have that. So are people latching into that? Is that becoming something? I mean, I know you're just getting started.
I'll just be vulnerable.
Yeah.
If I can. Yes. Like, so we had over 100 lead scans today and yesterday, which is absolutely
phenomenal.
Bonkers. Literally bonkers.
Yeah.
But the litmus test is still out there, right? Because like when we talk to MSPs, they're like, yes, we need this. This is important for us.
Just like the 20 things they wrote in their notebook for their big things they were going to do when they came.
Exactly.
Okay,
And you know, the scary part is, well, no one's ever done this before. So it's great to say, here's a vision. Does this make sense? They say yes. But now to go into the execution phase of like, will you actually take the journey? Will you
Can I
commit
make
the
the
time
content?
yourself?
Can I teach you?
Yeah,
all
because
of those things.
Right, because what I'm telling MSPs is like, there's no easy button here. I can't just push a button and all of a sudden you have this working. You're going to have to commit to some of this too. And so that's the next scary step for us is, will MSPs kind of, will they work through that, and will they be accountable themselves?
Will they hold them there?
Yeah, and so this is the great test.
And I'm not trying to Johnny foreshadow, but we're going to roll to a video of Right of Boom that I put together and that the studios team together, and then we'll come back with another guest. And I want to hear Alex's perspective on this same thing. Wes, as always, brother, I love you.
Yeah,
keep going and keep being vulnerable. That's what we do in this world.
Yeah.
Be honest.
Appreciate you. Thanks, Matt.
Too, brother. Here we are, getting ready to get to Vegas so that we can ride motorcycles with friends. If you don't want to lose your fingers to a rock, I can understand that. Excited about getting out?
Yeah.
Getting on the road?
You're gonna get on the road.
This fine steed I have here. Not cat, but motorcycle. Yes. The BMW Motorrad R1250 RT. Everywhere we go, just about, she's my best friend and my partner for the last 22 years. And in celebration of International Women's Day, I will add a component of my wife right here is riding behind me on a giant BMW, and we have exceeded 110 miles an hour in turns. And what was interesting is the two guys riding with us, my wife is holding my left shoulder here, and she is turning around behind herself in the turns with one hand on my shoulder, and that's it, and a GoPro in the other hand. And what was funny is one of the guys came up and goes, "Man, you're for real." It was just awesome. But so women can do anything. So I would just add to that. But this was beautiful scenery. If you haven't made it to Right of Boom in Vegas, or if you haven't had the opportunity to come to a conference in Vegas, you should definitely take the opportunity, if you're a motorcyclist, to go out and rent a motorcycle and ride through the Valley of Fire. It was gorgeous. It was 68 degrees out, and we were just thankful to be able to do that. So continue watching this, and we'll come right back. And I've got an amazing guest with me here. All right, very good. Let's get into it. So, Alex, you heard all this with Wes, right? You heard us talk about it, and he did kind of call you out a little bit. So you thought the idea was trash, is how I determined this, is what he said. Is that?
I may have said something like that. and this is before I knew Wes, and I had a lot of respect for Wes.
Sure.
But I really felt what I said. Right?
Yeah. At least you're honest.
50 training portals, and they can't find what's in most of them. And that's one of the big problems we have. But then I realized just recently here that Wes is actually a very conscientious and kind of a nervous person. I'm afraid he probably didn't sleep for like a month after I told him that.
Yeah. He called me a few times. A little weird.
So now I'm second guessing like why I'm on his team, and like, why he's going to push me in front of the bus. But yeah,
that's awesome. Joking aside though, you actually seem like, and from talks, you're actually trying to solve the problem you brought, right? Like if you think about it, the discussions we've had, Matt, I don't care where your content is. We just want to help curate it, take people through it, which you actually just got rid of consoles, theoretically.
That's the goal.
Right? So you kind of solved it.
Yeah, and we have some other plans too. I don't believe that's a solved problem.
Okay. I love
it's a solvable problem.
That's a growth mindset, by the way.
Yeah.
And I just want to put that out there.
It's an iterative concept, right? We're gonna solve for little bits and pieces of it as we go. There's other ways that we have in mind, and we'll share some of those in the future. But we're going to pick apart some of these privatized, democratized portals and start to bring everybody back into a community learning aspect, because we learn best as a community. We saw it at the show here.
Yes.
Everybody's learning something together, and education is just more powerful that way. It's the reason we go to school in the community.
It's a true story. But one of the things that Wes alluded to, and I'd love your thoughts on this, is accountability, right? We as MSPs are constantly, and I still identify as an MSP. I don't think you can wash it off.
Me too. Yeah.
Right. Like it's like banking when you rob a bank, or perhaps I've said too much. But no, when we think about this, as MSPs, we're pulled a million directions. And at the end of the day, what do we care about? I care about that person's experience with their technology, right? I care about my customers, my partners. And so, Dom, you've lived through this, right? You get pulled in a million different directions. Is it hard to find accountability for things that are maybe secondary thoughts or skills-based time? Like, how did you deal with that?
It's hard to hold yourself accountable for secondary things. Like, I would assign myself stuff and catch myself not getting it done and reprioritizing my own shiny thing syndrome. So yeah.
We had a in our traction, we actually, with traction you have your tasks, you review in the level 10 meeting your tasks, then you go into your issues, and then out of IDS you get more tasks, and that's ultimately the way it functions. But it was funny, in mine we had this concept of a faux rizzle. FORIZZLE.
I heard the word, but
I know. I just want to make sure it's spelled.
We're gonna need
it's
some
for real
here.
By definition. It's just for real in just language. But what we would do is, if Dom, I'd go, hey Dom, did you get your task done? No. We'd say, no, for real next time I'm going to do it. For Rizzle, I'm going to do it next time. And I was never allowed to have more than 3 for Rizzles.
Got it.
Which meant I could put it off for 3 for Rizzles every time. And my point is,
you no matter what the accountability. Damn.
The for Rizzles, you're going to go for Rizzles. You said 3 for Rizzles.
You're going to do the for Rizzles. All right.
But how do you expect to add through that layer of pain accountability for people to get training, to learn where they are, and to build defensibility?
Well, I think if we start to pick apart accountability at an MSP, like I didn't have for Rizzles, so my MSP training looked like this. I ran around the help desk one day and went, well, we suck at troubleshooting this, so I'm going to get everybody trained on it. You get training and you get training and you get training. I'm like Oprah, like throwing it at everybody. And then I go back to do my job, and the phone rings, and they start doing trouble tickets, and nobody gets any training. And 3 months later, I realized we still suck at the thing we sucked at 3 months ago. And then I'm in there yelling at everybody going, why the hell didn't you do the training? And they went, well, 80% utilization and billable hours and stuff and things. And you didn't make time for it.
Well, you just triggered me on something else. Is that a gap in education for that person?
It absolutely, well, it is, but it's also a gap in priorities for leadership.
That's what I meant. For the leadership, is it a gap in their education to manage the priorities to solve those bigger challenges?
And it is, and it's the organization not empowering the employee to keep the owner or the leadership accountable to education. It's not just the employee who's accountable to go do the work you assign them. The company is accountable to give them time to do it. Right?
Yeah.
We used to think, oh, well, I go home and play with technology, so all my employees must go home and learn stuff too. Like, just go home and learn.
Put in 2 more hours if you don't mind, just to get this done. I know you're already at 70.
Yeah. It's just not how that works.
Dom, there was a question, if we'll pop it up, from YouTube, from the audience, that had asked, Dom, how do you keep people accountable, right? Lisa G had asked, how do you keep people accountable?
You guys foreshadowed it. Like, it's I think the beauty of having, particularly level 10, but I'm sure it's not the only format for this, is everyone is equally accountable for what's happening in there, right? There is no, I tell the people under me that I'm not running that meeting, I'm facilitating that meeting, right? And they need to hold me accountable. But I think if you're going it alone, I mean, for me, it was just recognition that, like, I'm not going to make money if I don't do the thing. So I should do, like, I don't know, I kind of forced myself, I guess, right? And that's how I started prioritizing. If you want to grow, you need to prioritize the growth tasks, not the nerdy tasks, right? And that was my challenge, because I wanted to do the nerdy bits.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the level 10, and sure, we can check in on it there, but hopefully there's also a one-on-one, right? Where we're sitting down with our employee, and I'm going, Matt, I love having you here. Like, you've been here 2 years, you're a good level 2 engineer, but I'd like to see you expand beyond that. Like, I want you to have a career here. Do you want to be a tier 3 engineer? Do you want to be a VCIO? Do you want to be a sales engineer? Pick a pathway and let's start working you through that. And in our one-on-ones, we should be doing career and growth pathing for our employees. And as an industry, we typically behave a little immature and don't get to things like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really important component, is this pathway that an employee is on that gives them a career at an MSP instead of just making it a job.
Yeah, well, you nailed that. I've definitely lost friends, not like to death, but to leaving the MSP, saying, I don't have a career here. Where am I going to go? What is this going to do for me? How am I going to grow, right? In those pieces. And we all want that, right? Everything we want in life is to provide for the ones we love. We want to be able to do the things we want to do. And so I do like focusing on skilling up. And I think maybe what I'll do is we can tackle that with Kyle here in a minute, and we'll roll to a video here in a sec. But I think skilling up and being able to track that, and also showing that I care about my employees, because I want them to grow and be to where they may not be what I need anymore. Or maybe I don't grow and they outgrow me, but that's what we want, right? That's empathy. It's this understanding.
See them better off tomorrow than they were when they came to our organization.
That's what I love y'all for, brother. And I just want to always say thank you. Oh, we're going to bumps? You didn't want COVID? We're close enough.
Get your COVID.
All right, cool. That's fine. Love you, brother. Roll the video. We'll be back in just a sec.
It is right of boom time, which is awesome, right? We're here for pre-day, everything's starting to happen, we got the signs going up. But Pax8 is at right of boom for a pre-day, and I'm actually getting to lead this with Sunil Yu and Robert Chaffee, and it's an awesome one where people are gonna walk away learning a way to actually communicate cybersecurity challenges to their partners and their clients, but also a way to visualize and understand the challenges they face in a very simple and easy to use fashion, combining CIS, or the Center for Internet Security, as well as the actual controls being mapped over to the cyber defense matrix. My argument is it's those companies that fail the fastest and for the least impact to the organization that will win. There's this interesting divergence playing out, right? They facilitate every control, right? Because they're mapping the controls and mapping what's being done to them, the governance aspect of that. But in the same breath, they actually don't necessarily, and some do, provide .1s, right? Because what you were bringing up, 2.1, 1.1, extensibility on 3.x, right? Those types of things. So we're going through an exercise that I would encourage you to do, even if you are wrong, and even if you don't have all the data. Okay? So I suck, I'm going to say it first, and I have taken my best stab at it, but it's the exercise that matters. How many of you put your date of birth in your Facebook profiles? Or your real name? Or your city? Right? I don't. I think I live in like 7 different cities. I move virtually every year. It's much cheaper than moving. But I actually put out fake data, fake OSINT information, because your enemy can gather this without you knowing.
Kyle Richardson. All right, we are back. We actually have Kyle here with me. I'm stoked about it because you're about as high energy as me. Like, I feel we get to about that level together.
That level? Or that
Maybe
level?
That level.
That level.
Could be this level. All right, fair enough. That was too much fun. I'm sorry, y'all.
Drop the mic.
Okay, Dom, I apologize. It was all on me. So we got to do something here. It's actually your birthday. It is. That's what I understand. You live in Trails. It was Kelvin's as well.
Yeah.
We're going to collectively sing happy birthday to you and Kelvin.
Yeah.
Y'all want to join us? Anybody in the audience? Dom, you got to sing too, buddy. It's going to be off on
Let's do it.
timing, but we're going
Let's
to
do
do
it.
it.
It's gonna be a little
Happy
weird. That's okay.
birthday
To you.
Happy birthday
Happy
to
birthday to you.
Happy
Happy
birthday,
birthday,
Kyle.
Kyle.
Happy
Happy
birthday
birthday to you.
Hey, happy International. It's Happy International Women's Day song. No, it's great, man. I appreciate you having here. I'm sorry for the singing. Y'all can like give me negative Matt points for the singing. It's terrible. I just lost points here.
It's my fault.
I wanted to tackle something that Wes and we started down this path with. You're talking about empathy. We're talking about training. We're talking about guiding people to be better. We're talking about giving people a path. And I don't know anybody that's had a better path than you.
Ooh.
Because you started in this Best Buy space, which Wes joked about, but said we're hiring from Best Buy, and then built a career as a young person and drove to where you are today. So why don't you tell me a little bit of that journey and what is Empath to you?
So what is Empath to me? So one of the things after I got out of Best Buy corporate was coming into the MSP space, recognizing that no, we do not hire from Microsoft. We don't hire from CrowdStrike.
It's true.
And we are primarily a services business. I make a joke a lot of times where MSP stands for mediocre service provider because, and I mean it in a respectful format.
I don't know that those are congruent.
No,
but
right,
okay,
no,
continue.
exactly.
It's
But
fine.
the idea, right, is we're never going to be a squeaky clean as
a polished enterprise with the
polished
fun,
enterprise where a sysadmin has 40 hours to do 8 hours of work, right? Yeah, exactly. But anywho, getting back to the concept of I have to be able to get somebody that has the soft skills that wants to work with people, they like people, and then bring them into an environment where they can get a client to a space that they need to be. Your point.
Yeah.
You're pointing.
So it's like a positive thing. When I'm pointing, I'm like agreeing. It's weird. It's my non-speaking
and we were talking to Peter Kajawa from Service Leadership.
Yeah.
And he made this fantastic analogy. It blew our minds, which was as MSPs, we are more like college football teams and professional football teams. We need to be able to get somebody in our business and performing at a fantastic level to where we can win the championship
in a short period of time,
and then allow them to go on to their career into the next level. And we can't be the desperate ex-boyfriend that goes, don't leave me.
Touche.
But
No, I get
you
it.
see it in MSP, right, Don? You probably saw this. Like you were afraid of losing that championship person that you couldn't franchise tag.
Yeah. I had never thought about it that way, right? And that is the opposite of empathy. That is the antithesis of empathy in the sense that I am not caring how this impacts you. I only care about me. I'm extracting what I can from you.
I gave you your skills and skills.
Yeah. Satima Fowler said this, and I love her to death for it. She's obviously not the person that created it, but she says, what if I train my people and they leave? What if I don't and they stay? It's much worse, right? Like, I want good people, but I love your college analogy versus professional. Professional, I have a certain set of skills I already have in this, like within the edge of the bell curve capabilities of everybody else here, right? Whereas college, I'm going to be some of the best of a high school, but I've got to get somebody that's never worked together and in 4 short years hope to take a team with some talent, but no put together congruency and make them actually function. Well, MSPs are similar. They're hiring people that are in the lower part of the talent stream, at least initially.
Someone's got to get started. You got to get started somewhere.
Got to start somewhere. Yeah. And then they're growing them into amazing technicians. I mean, Dom came out pretty good. I wasn't very good, but Dom came out pretty good as a technician. Dom, have you ever taken somebody that had nothing, grew them into that technician? Like, have you watched what happens in somebody's life? Because if not, I have. Tell me what you're.
You need to remember, I run a sizable services team here at Pax8, and we actually, we take a fair amount of talent that has outgrown their MSP, and then they work for us for a few years, and then they move on to whatever, right? And I've instilled it, or hopefully instilled it on the leaders that work under me that, like, I don't care if they leave, right? If we've set them up for career success, then that's your job, right? If they succeeded while they were here and they're in a position to continue to succeed, that's great. So there's a talent pipeline involved here that I think is extremely powerful. But you're right. Like, at first, as a leader, I absolutely had that ego of like, no, you work for me. Like, I'll throw an extra few dollars on you, like whatever. But now I'm just like, great, you're going to go do something cool, right? And it doesn't bother me. I mean, it bothers me a little, but it doesn't bother me too much.
How amazing is it to where if you can have a system to where when they leave, you have something that can fully bring someone else through that pipeline. Now you actually have a machine, a talent factory, as we're kind of starting to call it, because I can grow my MSP and not have this recruitment challenge of always looking for unicorns.
Well, we've been talking about talent pipelines, but really what we've had in the past was talent buckets, right? Like we've had a bucket I can carry with water, and as long as there, we're great. A pipeline puts more in behind it, right? It's not a busket anymore. It's actually a pipeline.
Well, and not only that, now I can calculate how many days it takes me to train that employee, which was the number one KPI we had at Best Buy. Is how could I go from 0 to accountable? How many days did that take?
Now you went another state to 0 to accountable, which 0 to trained is not the same as 0 to accountable.
No, exactly.
Right? So what's that difference? Help me to unpack that.
So 0 to accountable to me is how long does it take them to be productive on the requirements that their job needs of them in that moment?
Sure.
So if you think about it from a financial perspective, while they're training, you're not making any money off them because they're training.
Right.
So at what point can I expect for them to be minimally producing to provide services to your customer? Because as MSPs, the people are the product.
Yes.
And we forget about that sometimes, right? They're on the shelf, literally. And then when someone comes up and says, I want to buy your services.
Service ticket.
You pull an employee off the shelf. Well, if I can't have product on the shelf, I can't further sales. So really, the growth of an MSP is your ability to recruit and train people, not find customers.
Right. The other side of this too, if you think about it, we talk about tribal knowledge. We talk about people that have been there 20 years. We have all those things. If you get an effective training and talent pipeline, which right at Boom helps drive some talent growth, right? But if you get an effective training pipeline and a method and how you're going to get them there, coupled with good process, coupled with good documentation, I would love to make hundreds of people go have amazing careers and still have an amazingly functional MSP.
Oh, and I'm sure either Don or you guys have had that experience of someone calls you out of the blue years after they've left your company and they go, Matt, Don, you got me here. Thank you.
It happened last night.
No shit.
I had a guy call me. He was actually coming back from London and he actually hated me. He hated me. He quit because I told him he wasn't good enough. I told him he wasn't listening. He wasn't trying to train. He wasn't. And I was blunt. I was an idiot. But he called me afterwards and he said, Matt, I hated you for 5 years. He said, I hated you.
Who can hate you?
He said, well, apparently, no, he did. And he said, I hated you. He said, it made me go train. I said, I'm going to tell Matt he's wrong. I'm going to go get better. I'm going to prove him. And he said, at some point the transition happened, and I realized, I don't hate you. You made me this. You told me I wasn't learning and progressing. You told me I wasn't willing to do the things. You told me I wasn't accountable. You told me I was being too arrogant about my feelings and being not empathetic to the customer. And he changed all those things. And for me, like, that's a win. And so I can only imagine how many wins y'all are going to help create. I appreciate you coming and being here. I've loved watching y'all grow through this. And Ride of Boom is the perfect place to launch it. Andrew Morgan is a legacy of the same thing that y'all are building and adding that. So appreciate you as always, man.
You and this,
man, I'm just here to do my little part. So I appreciate you. We're going to make a change. It's International Women's Day, so I thought there was no better way than close this out than with a very, very good friend of mine. Doctor has been making chips, like chips, not chips like we eat, but the digital chips you run your lives on are part of her brain in a lot of cases. And so I want to bring in my friend Ann Westerheim. If you don't mind sitting down and grabbing the headset, and I want to hear about your experience in the conference today. So, Ann, why don't you introduce yourself real quick and let everybody know who you are once they bring you on camera. There she is. All right, my friend Ann.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Always.
This has been a really great conference. 2 completely packed days of learning.
Yeah.
And a pre-day.
2 packed.
Yeah. And I was super, super lucky and got placed on a really talented team. And our team actually won Capture the Flag.
Oh, at Black Point.
Yeah.
And let me ask you this. Have you done a Capture the Flag before?
I've never done a Capture the
This
Flag.
This is your first one?
Yeah, and it was super, super fun. And,
That's awesome.
I contributed to, there were a whole bunch of questions on CIS controls. So
and you might have heard a little bit about CIS and used it in your life for like the last million years. Possibly. So did you feel like you were loaded there with that one? You got set up for success?
The questions were pretty tricky, but it was me and another guy. We were kind of focused on that while the other 2 folks were focused on some of the questions, the main ones. And it was awesome. A lot of fun.
And it's immersive, right?
Yeah.
And it also does things like, one of the things Black Point did was they made you work in their SIM, in their SOC capabilities. And they said, hey, go find this, go do these things. And I bet at some point you make this thought of, gosh, that's what they do for me.
Yeah.
Right. And it's that immersive learning.
Yeah.
It's placing you in the moment. I would say do more, capture the flags.
Yes.
I got hooked on that.
I'm this is not my last one. It was so much fun.
Dom, have you ever experienced CTF type learning or gamified type learning before? I have to imagine the answer is yes. And what are your thoughts?
I love a good CTF, right? Like I need something in my hands. If I'm going to learn it, I need to interact with it. And that's what a CTF is literally built to do, right? So yeah, I love me a good CTF.
Yeah, they're fantastic. In fact, we did one during Cybersecurity Awareness Month at Pax8 and had our internal employees. And some of them wanted to throw things, right? It's frustrating. And a lot of design flaws and challenges and everything. So we talked about with Wes Spencer earlier, this one big thing concept. Like, what did you take away as your one big thing? Mine earlier is this understanding that this growth mindset that if we ever get static, we're done. Yeah. What was your one big thing? You sat through a lot of different stuff over the last 3 days.
One big thing, distilling it down into one is going to be really tough. I really like the Navy SEAL presentations.
But I already stole that one from you, so you keep going.
Well, the thing I liked about that, the training they go through, all the preparation, kind of prove to yourself, like if you're in a bad situation, like I can get through this. Yes. And I think that's important. Working in cybersecurity, I mean, we're going to face some really tough situations with our customers and, doing the tabletops and doing the capture, doing things like that, just getting that muscle memory is extremely important. And then I think also working in cybersecurity, one of the things I worry about, just having an MSP, there's so many threats out there. Small businesses don't always listen to us. And I really liked seeing the return of Arnie Bellini today. So,
that was great.
his optimism about, the market and how we're fighting the good fight. I thought that was really refreshing because I need to when I come to an event, that's what I get out of it. Like I get that energy that makes me kind of distill some thoughts and
ruminate, write books, right? Oh, if anybody's watching, if you haven't read Ann's book, Cybersecurity on Main Street, is that the exact title?
Cybersecurity for Main Street.
For Main Street. It is a very pragmatic book you could buy and give to any human that can read the English language, and they will gain things about how to do better in their own personal lives and their business lives around cybersecurity. So if you haven't picked that up, definitely do that. I'll make a plug for you since you're not a book plugger.
Thank you so much.
The other thing I want to unpack is when we were doing the Navy SEAL conversation, there were 2 terms used. there's preparation, and there's planning. And he stated that most people get those confused. And I really like that difference. Preparation is me doing burpees in the parking lot, me making sure I'm physically ready before I go play a football game. I have to be in the right shape. I have to eat. I have to have preloaded with carbs. I have to be ready and in the moment mentally for that game. Those are all preparation. Planning is, how am I going to beat Dom, that tight end that always wins? How am I going to? Those are planning.
Yeah.
And what he talked about on the stage was planning is useless at some point, right? You can only plan past 60, 70, 80%. The rest of it is going to happen based on preparation and skill sets and tabletops and immersive CTFs and conferences like this make you flex the muscles.
Yeah.
They give you the preparation. So when you come back and you have a process and you have ways to train people and you have those things, you can execute those plans.
Yeah.
Right?
He quoted Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan.
Until they get punched in the mouth.
And that's when the preparation, all your training, that's what you're going to rely on in that situation, because nothing's going to go the way you think it's going to go.
100%.
And just getting that preparation. I like what John Strand had to say today about backdoors and breaches, about each module is a Lego piece, like learn about this. The 600-page written document about something is going to mean nothing, but build each little building block of skills. Then you have them when you need them and you can put them together. So.
Well, it's funny because John also talks about this or Dom talked about go broad and go narrow, right? And in some ways, that's even talking about how we're going narrow in those cases, right? We know incident response. Now let's dig into some narrow pieces of what should I do for planning? What should I do for discovery? Those tools, those capabilities. And I can't thank you enough for joining in live and just doing this on the spur. I appreciate all y'all for joining us and everybody that's here. And if you aren't going to these conferences and if you haven't been to Beyond, which by the way, are you coming to Beyond?
I will be at Beyond.
I took that out of the flow. I had known, make sure. I'm glad. Okay, good. If you're not coming to Beyond, if you're not doing those types of things, you're missing one half of the way you need to learn. And if you're doing other things and bringing some cognizant training plan, you're missing the other half. So register for Beyond if you haven't. See, there's my one plug. That's all I'm going to do. Other than that, Dom, why don't you close us out, brother? I appreciate you being here.
And
thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. This has been a great show live from Ride of Boom. Thanks so much for being on with us. Thanks so much for putting up with Vegas hotel Wi-Fi for a few blips in there. I'll plug it again. Don't forget to sign up for Beyond. It's going to be a killer agenda. But don't forget to attend a broad range of shows. Really look at what's available. Figure out what is going to teach you what you need to learn from that broad perspective so that you can get narrow in the right spots. That's our show for this week. We'll see you next week.